Welcome back to the Vanessa G Fitcast. I'm Vanessa Pozos, and here with me is my co-host and husband, Omar Pozos. How are you doing, Omar?
You always ask me that, and I don't know how to answer. But let's see. Today, and I look at my watch to
You always check the weather to be like, oh, well, how's the weather?
How's the weather? Listen, the weather dictates a lot of our moods, I think.
That is true.
But today I'm excited. I'm feeling good. We're busy. Work is a little crazy right now. And I think stress is a little bit higher than I normally want it to be. But I think I'm powering through.
It's just, it's like we've talked about. It's like the double-edged sword of being a business owner is like, you just, it's a constant ebb and flow of like feeling really good and then feeling stressed. And it's just like, that's the trade-off of being able to have some of the perks of owning a business is also the reasons that most people don't do it.
Yeah.
Which is
remember
yesterday,
you've seen the movie Click, right? With Adam Sandler?
Yeah.
I was telling you how I wanted one of those remotes so I could just pause everything. I could just be like, all right, I just need to take an hour or two to be paused. But other than that, we're doing good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah. I mean, in today's episode, I actually going off of a little bit of like some recent things that have been on my mind. And so I had shared in my Instagram story yesterday. So for those who, maybe you look at my stories, you might often see that many times my Instagram stories will be me just like brain dumping things that I've been kind of journaling out. When I say journaling, oftentimes I'm even just doing a lot in my like note section of my phone. Because ultimately I do believe and I do find within myself that I just believe that anytime that I can kind of slow my thoughts down or even just like, get my thoughts out of my head and just kind of almost think about like what is on my mind, get it down on paper or on a phone. Obviously you write or type a lot slower than you think. So it forces you to actually look at your thoughts and be kind of aware of like, where are these emotions and feelings come from? Because, obviously, as I've talked about before, I do believe that all emotions and feelings tie back to our thoughts. They may not always be our like conscious thoughts, right? Kind of in like the forefront of our mind, but it all comes down to our thoughts, whether it's subconscious, deeper thoughts, or those like conscious top of mind type of thoughts. And so yesterday, my family was faced with the challenge of we did lose a family dog, and it was a sad day. It was a sad morning, mainly because, it wasn't the fact that, this is a older dog and she's very loved. And, if you looked at just the facts of saying, okay, this is a 13-year-old dog. She's had some different health issues in the past with, she's had to have surgery before. She's obviously at 13, and for like a bigger sized dog, like that's getting definitely up there in age. Like if you look at the facts, you would think that your kind of expectation would be like, yeah, this dog is going to pass away at some point, and like you'd be mentally preparing for that. And so when the time comes, your emotions would probably be, obviously still sad. There's obviously still pain there, for anybody who's a dog lover knows that. But I think that the experience of a situation like that can be very different when you have expectations of like, this is coming and, we're aware and we're kind of like mentally preparing for it. Now, in this situation with this dog, what really kind of caught us by surprise is, so my parents, my family actually had two older dogs, and the other one was actually older than Stella, the dog that passed. So the other dog, Levi, is actually older. And Levi, like it's almost kind of the running joke in our family of like, he's just going to live forever because he looks old in every way.
I think Levi is the true like Benjamin Button story. The older he gets, the younger he gets.
Except he does not. He doesn't look like he's getting younger. Yeah. He's the type of dog like you can see his age. But yet we've been honestly for the past 3 years very much like preparing for the fact that Levi at some point it's going to become his time. But nevertheless, he continues to still be, just continuing to like in many ways still, be that fun, spunky dog.
Yeah.
But, in comparison, because I think so many of us, we were just focused on thinking that like we need to prepare for, these two dogs are bonded. What's, when Levi passes, should we adopt another older dog to keep Stella companion? And I think in a lot of ways, we just were not quite expecting for Stella to be the one to pass first. And mainly because if you looked at Stella, she didn't look her age. She very much like you, and I think, it might be common with doodles as well, but she looked younger than she was. She often acted younger than she was. She was super playful. She just was always had a lot of energy and in many ways.
Loved to swim, which was to me so cool.
In so many ways, we all forgot how old she was all the time, right? And so unfortunately, when, this situation happened yesterday, even the morning before this situation happened, she was still acting very normal, ate her breakfast, went outside, kind of ran around a little bit, was just being very, very normal. But unfortunately, she, we're presuming, had a heart attack or stroke, and just very suddenly passed away. And this was very shocking, and kind of just the situation around it. There was a lot of very, very hard emotions that came up in many of my family members. And so as I was very much in my emotions yesterday, and having a lot of conversations with family members and a lot of tears and just strong emotions, I often, as I tend to do when I'm feeling a lot of emotions, I'll sit back and I'll just kind of explore my thoughts a little bit. And something that was really coming up for me was just thinking about how much our expectations, or even like misexpectations, shape how we feel in day-to-day life. And so obviously, like I talked about there, it was ultimately, we had a lot of very strong emotions because of the fact that none of us expected in the slightest that we were going to be losing that dog that day. And so with that, it felt a lot more painful. There was a lot of challenging emotions that came up. On the flip side, if we simply, had more of that expectation of, this is an older dog, her time might be coming soon, and we're kind of like mentally preparing, and like we've all, as you tend to do if you know a dog, maybe is of old age, maybe they're sicker, things like that, you probably are, being very intentional about like understanding that, every time maybe you're with this dog, it might be the last time, things like that, right? Well, in this kind of situation, if we had just expected to be losing her and had been more prepared for it and had been maybe anticipating it, then we probably would have felt more peaceful in the situation instead of, I would say, many of my family members felt very like distraught over it in a lot of ways in the way that it happened. And so bringing this into, of course, health and fitness and, the context that I tend to talk about these things, and, some of the things I was sharing about on my story that I did get a lot of, positive feedback from. And I like to kind of align this idea of our expectations and awareness around our expectations in day-to-day life, how much control it actually gives us in how we feel and how we experience life day to day. Because think of this in the context of your health and fitness goals. If you go into the week and your expectations for yourself are, all right, this week I am on it, maybe I'm like just kickstarted a new health and fitness routine, or I've decided I'm kind of like getting back to it. And this week I'm going to track my macros. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to go to the gym 4 times. I'm going to hit my 10K steps, and I'm going to sleep my 8 hours. And then Monday comes around and there's a big fire at work. You work late into the day. You miss your first planned workout. You realize at the end of the day that you didn't track anything. You realize that you ran on time and you were stressed, and you ended up having just some like different snacks around the office instead of eating any healthy meals. And what's going to happen? Your expectation for what you thought the week was going to look like, what you thought your habits and routines were going to look like, it has not been met in that first day. And so what do you think your thoughts are going to be at this point? Probably going to be like, gosh, this sucks. Like, I'm the worst. Like,
I'm terrible. I can't do this.
I'm never going to be able to reach my goals. Like, this is pointless. Like, these are probably common thoughts that come up for people. I know in my own past experiences, those are thoughts that have come up for me. And when we're having those types of thoughts, how are we going to feel? We're probably going to feel pretty defeated. We're just going to feel pretty bad all around, right? And if I'm feeling defeated, I'm feeling bad, do I think I'm now going to like make the most of the rest of the week and adjust my plan? Or do you think I'm going to end up just being like, this is, pointless, and probably just kind of give in and, maybe do nothing, or just do the bare minimum, just feel kind of worse and worse, right?
Yeah, the latter for sure.
Exactly. And so on the flip side, what if maybe on Sunday you do a little bit of preparation, you look at your week and you notice that, my plan ultimately was or has been, or I would like it to be, all those things I stated earlier, tracking my macros, eating healthy, getting my steps, going to the gym, sleeping well, all these things. But yet looking at my week, I can see that, there's a lot going on in work right now. I can see that, the kids, they're starting up their, spring
This shows how much we know about kids.
Like, what's a spring sport?
Baseball.
Yeah, they're starting up spring ball. Like, there's just all these different things I can see on the calendar. And so what might normally have been my expectation, or what I would like to be my expectation for myself in relation to my health and fitness goals this week, might not be entirely realistic. Yep. And so if I go into the week with that expectation, then almost inevitably reality is not going to match that expectation I had. And what's going to happen? I'm going to feel bad about it. I'm going to, think negative thoughts about that, and I'm going to feel bad about that. And it's going to be really, really hard to then take positive actions from that negative thought.
Yeah. And I think honestly, you did a great job, and I'll hype you up for a little bit, babe. But I think you put it very well when you were saying how, you get into trouble when your expectations don't match your reality. And so what you need to do is, shift out of that or reset those expectations so that you can, have it work for you, not against you kind of thing. And I think it's very hard to do. And where I'm going with this is I kind of want to ask you, like, on the days where, like, okay, let's say you do prep on a Sunday, but then Monday comes around and, for you guys yesterday, for the whole family, like, Stella passes away and it just throws off your whole day. In that instant, like, I think the very much common human reaction is to just go fight or flight, and you're just like focus on that. But what did you do yesterday other than like journaling, or if there was anything else that you want to share with the listeners that helped you get out of this, fight or flight mode and step back, reset those expectations kind of thing?
Yeah, well, I think from like a broader perspective, it comes back to really, kind of this idea of, if your expectations don't end up matching your reality, because obviously then we have to factor in there's the unexpected situation. So even in that example I gave before, maybe you look at your week and you identify, okay, spring ball is back, the crazy work week. Like, you can obviously anticipate that, okay, this is actually what I should expect from the week. But there are also times where maybe you expect the week to look a certain way and to be, in alignment with those things that you want to do. But then you go into the week and unexpected things come up. So with that, I think that's a really great question then of like,
Thanks.
How do we, you're so smart. How do we handle kind of these thoughts and emotions that come up when expectation doesn't match reality, right? And so at the end of the day, like, you kind of at that point have like two, if you want to really simplify it, two levers to toggle. You can change your expectation or you can change your reality. And oftentimes I think people want to just change the reality when the reality isn't changeable. So like yesterday then being that perfect example of, a dog passes and, many of my family members and myself are very upset over this and, asking a lot of questions of like, why did this have to happen now? Why did it have to happen this way? Like, if only I had gone home the night before and, been able to see her one more time, and like all these questions that naturally pop up for us, right? And, kind of what our brain is doing is we almost want to like change the reality. We're like grabbing at straws to be like, I just wish the situation was different. And obviously, like, we're human, and there's just like that raw humanness in that too, of we have to understand that, like, of course, we're gonna have those moments and those times where it's normal and natural. We're gonna be emotional. We're gonna want to just change the situation. We might need to just feel that and let ourselves be in it for a little bit. But at a certain point, we have to make the decision of, do I want to continue to like indulge in these emotions that are gonna, keep me stuck? Obviously, as I was very in those emotions, it was hard for me to hop on. I had to like an interview that morning. I had, some other things that I needed to do. It's obviously a lot more challenging going into those when my brain is doing that thing of like, gosh, I just wish the reality was different. Yeah. So what then did I do in that situation? Going back to your question, instead, I focused on, okay, I can't change my reality. I can change my expectations at this point. Because what expectations I did have of, I'm expecting this to be a nice, smooth, easy Monday. I've planned for the day. I'm not expecting to have a, family emergency come up. It's going to be a smooth day. Well, reality turns out to be different. So rather than fighting that by being like, I want to change reality back to meeting my expectations and kind of just like undo what's happened or change what's happened, instead, I need to just accept that this has happened. It's unfortunate and I don't like the reality, but I can now mold and kind of change my expectations in a way to match what's going on. And so what I mean by that is ultimately choosing kind of my perspective, my thoughts around it. Because what my brain wanted to do is ask all the questions of like, why did this have to happen? And I oh my gosh, like, she was, alone in that instant that happened. And, all these things that like, I don't even want to go back down that path again of my brain doing the brain thing of just like, getting me more worked up over the situation.
Yeah.
And instead I actively had to take control of my thoughts and choose different thoughts that helped me see a different perspective and helped my expectations become more aligned with the situation. And so that looked like me considering other perspectives of, I'm actually really glad it happened that morning because, specifically it could have happened, maybe later in the day when my mom would have been at work and nobody would have been home. It could have happened a few days later when, we're going to be traveling with my family and she would have not had, the majority of our family around with her. There's so many like, well, it could have been this, it could have been that, so many other things. I can, consider the perspective of as much as it's really painful for us as humans to lose a loved animal, a family member, as I personally would consider dogs to be. As painful as that is, there still is the aspect of at least it might have been less painful for her because of the fact that Stella was energetic and playful and excited up until the very end. And because it was sudden and unexpected, hopefully it wasn't also a, drawn out, painful, being sick for days type of experience for her.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of perspectives that we can choose to take. And this is obviously a very specific example, but I think this can be pulled into any scenario.
Yeah. On the fitness side, I mean, even yesterday, like I shared this morning, work has been crazy and we're super busy and stressed. And, I've really wanted to make it an effort for myself to also pour into me a little bit because as any entrepreneur or busy mom or anybody that's kind of listening, you can very much see the pattern of like, hey, I have all of these, expectations of going to the gym, but then the day gets caught up, kids are sick, work gets busy. And next thing you know, it's like last night, it was 7:00 and I was like, dang it. I'm like, I didn't make it to the gym today. I know we're also traveling. So for me, I was like, well, all right, here's the deal. I can either, go to the gym and maybe have a 50% effective workout, or I can choose not to go and just not have a 0% effective workout, right? So at that point in time, it was like 7:45 and I normally hate going to the gym that late. One, because it's also packed and I hate that. But anyways, I got there and funny enough, I think sometimes, things are just put in front of you when you need them. But I saw like a Justin Sua reel and it was like Michael Phelps talking about, and he was like, well, he's like, you can choose to be, 10% effective, 20% effective, or you can choose to be at 0. He goes, but it's consistency. It's showing up that, compounds over time. And that's what, pushed me to be, I don't even know how many gold medals he won. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I was like, that's a great point. I'm like, let me reset my own expectations. I'm like, let me just have at least a 50% as well of a workout or do 50% of the movements, but at least I got something, which is better than nothing. And then I actually ended up having a great workout. And I was telling you yesterday, I was like, dang, I felt pretty good. So anyways, little hacks like that to where, I mean, even like a walk in the afternoon could have been better than me sitting at my desk for another 30 minutes, right? But it's little stuff like that, bringing it over to the health and fitness side that I think a lot of people miss, that, they look around and they're like, oh my gosh, that person is so, I don't know, ripped or jacked or in such great health. Like, how does he or she do it? Well, it's not that they're going 100 miles an hour every single day. It's just the little things that make such a big difference. And it goes back to what you're saying. It's the expectations, your reality, because your reality is going to change regardless of not too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a great example. So your expectation was that you would be getting, your workout in earlier. It would be a great workout. Then that didn't end up being the reality. So at that point, you were able to decide, do I just change my expectation of like, just what things are going to look like, or do I change my reality? And in a way, it's you changed a reality of, well, this is the reality is like, I haven't worked out yet today. It's late at night. I don't normally like working out this time, but that's okay. I'm going to do it anyway. Yep. And then that helped you kind of shift your expectation of like, oh, today actually the way you were thinking about the day and how your progress and how things were looking changed. And I think that's, we could even talk about how does this kind of then come into. And I think, the tangible kind of takeaway I want the listeners to have is the power of just awareness around your expectations and how that's shifting your emotions and your results day to day when it comes to your health and fitness. So looking at, I think, 2 aspects of this: expectations of what the journey is going to look like and expectations of what your results are going to look like when they're going to happen, and just ultimately, things around the results themselves. So on the journey side of it, that's kind of what we've been talking about a little bit of like, maybe you have an expectation of like, you start a fitness journey. Let's kind of continue with that example, and you expect it to look a certain way. You're like, this is going to be a huge priority for me. I'm going to do, maybe I'm working with a coach. I'm going to do everything the coach tells me to do perfectly. I'm going to be on top of it. I'm just going to like, cross those T's, dot those I's. I'm going to do everything I can to be successful. But something maybe happens, maybe it just ends up being more challenging than you expected it to be, or maybe you have other priorities, like whatever it is, maybe what actually ends up looking like the journey is different. It might look very different or might look a little bit different, but depending on the person, even just that slight difference of what they expected themselves to be doing, what they expected their habits, their routines, and their, essentially their adherence to their plan to look like, because that doesn't match their expectation, they feel bad. They, have thoughts that they might not even be aware of. They might be subconscious thoughts of something along the lines of, see, you always do this. You always start out gung-ho and then you never do it. You're never going to be able to do it. And that could be this like track that's just running in the background that you're not even aware of until you take a step back, you slow down, and you get curious of like, why am I feeling kind of crappy about like my plan right now? Why am I kind of feeling bad about myself right now? And you just get curious about that and just ask yourself that kind of question a little bit there. What were my expectations of myself? What expectations did I have that, what was this going to look like? What expectations did I have of myself throughout this? And just get curious about that. And I bet you will uncover what is causing you to feel bad. And just by realizing of like, oh, that's why I feel crappy right now is because I expected myself to be perfect. Like, let's be real. That's not realistic. If my friend came to me and she said, oh, I've been expecting to be perfect. I'm not perfect. Now I feel bad. I would tell her like, you're doing great. What are you talking about? So why can't we do that for ourselves too?
Yeah. On the other flip side of that too, it's, like even just progress, right? Number on the scale. Like, do we expect it to go down every single day, every single week, week after week, month after month? And sure, sometimes people do expect that. And again, the reality of it is your body fluctuates. There's so many things that go into that. So to your point, it's like, hey, sure, you want the scale to go down every single day, but sometimes it might be up. Sometimes it might be, steady where it's at. And then sure, in the long run, if you zoom out, it's that downward projection that you want to see. But again, day to day, hour by hour, minute by minute, it changes, it varies. And I think that's, to your point, it's having awareness of those thoughts, knowing how they're impacting how you're feeling, how you're responding. That's what makes such a big difference. And I know it's easier said than done, especially in the moment when you're, in the midst of stress and sick kids and a broken down car or a pet or a family member passing away. But it's, we're in that situation, and regardless of whether or not we like it, let's, reframe our thoughts. Let's do something about it, because we've got to get out of it at one point or another too,
Yeah. I mean, I have this conversation with clients sometimes where it's maybe, I think our team as a whole does a really great job of being very honest with our clients from the beginning of, evaluating, hey, based on your health history, based on your symptoms, based on, what you're expressing, maybe, from these labs, different things, here's what, kind of thinking is going to be a timeline in order to reach the specific goals that you have for yourself. And making sure, because of exactly what we're talking about here, making sure that people understand before they say like, yes, I want to do it, make sure that they understand and can expect what it's going to take, what it's going to look like, because it is so different for different people. Yet every once in a while, I'll have a client who, maybe we have that conversation in the beginning, but then a little bit in, maybe what they, it might've been what we talked about of, okay, maybe for you specifically, you have a lot of history of some GI issues. We've been dealing with some of these hormonal imbalance symptoms for years, and it might take, a few months just to start kind of chipping away at some of these symptoms here. And we're in agreement about that. And then maybe a few months goes by and we are chipping away at these symptoms as we expected. But then maybe they might express, I really hope that I would have lost a lot more weight by now. And that's when we have to have a conversation of, hey, totally, normal and expected that we're human and we're going to probably have some of these thoughts pop up that we didn't even realize in the beginning of maybe, I went into this thinking I am in this for, I don't care about fast results. I want long-term sustainable results. Yeah. And so I'm okay with doing this the right way so that it actually sticks and we actually heal from the inside out. But, I've also seen friends who, they just started a fitness journey and they, just lost a bunch of weight. And now I'm just feeling man, I wish I feel like that should be me. I wish I had those kinds of results too. And that's normal and that's expected because we're human and that's going to happen. We have to just build awareness around when those thoughts pop up, when our expectations might be getting in the way, and not let them override kind of how we feel about our progress. Because if our expectation was we're going to first work at these hormonal imbalance symptoms, and now we are making progress in that area, but we're not actually allowing our brain to notice and even like get excited about that progress, because now we're getting distracted with thinking like, well, this other person over here, they're losing weight more quickly, but we also don't know what their situation is and what
their dieting history.
Exactly.
Or like you were saying.
We don't know what their situation is, but we're letting that comparison and like those thoughts of like, maybe I should be, losing weight faster, get us down. What's going to happen? Maybe you give up on yourself completely before you even get there. And that would be terrible to do that to yourself, all because of your brain just getting caught up in expectations versus reality.
Yeah, man, that's really so powerful though. But yeah, I think it's to the episode's title. I think it very much is a hack, not just of health and fitness, but to life and, expectations, vacations, all of these things too. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what for the listener, I want you to really walk away from this episode taking a few minutes to think about what are some times recently where you've felt some really strong emotions around a situation. And I want you to ask yourself, what were my expectations of myself and of that situation? And how might have my expectations of myself or of the situation played into those emotions that I was feeling? And on the flip side of that, if my expectations had been different, or if in that moment I had, changed my expectations and kind of changed my perspective on the situation, on myself, how might that have made me feel differently and ultimately changed kind of the outcome or the result of that situation? I think that's a huge one for us to marinate on. Like Omar said, in day-to-day life, in every aspect. Obviously, I think this is it's a huge element of our health and fitness goals and achieving our health and fitness goals, but I do think this can play into every area of your life. So thank you so much for listening. As always, we ask that you, pay it forward by sharing this with a friend, leaving a 5-star rating and review, and maybe sharing it on your Instagram story. But we'll be back next week with another great episode.
Bye, you guys. And give your pets lots of cuddles and hugs this time.
Yeah.
See y'all.